Good evening, students. Welcome back to this discussion on audit. So we were discussing about audit planning, audit strategy in our previous session. And today we plan to continue with our discussion on that. So this is about chapter 2. Okay, so now quickly doing a recap of what we have discussed so far. See, audit planning, as we discussed, is all about any other planning. Okay, so if we talk about audit planning, what is that? It's like any other plan. Yeah. And there are a lot of benefits, as we understand, which are important in case of a plan. So if the plan is not there, then of course the execution will not go well. Okay, and in terms of this audit plan, we discussed that there are few areas as an auditor we are required to look at, which is more about the resource planning, which is more about the activities required to be done, the time plan in relation to various activities, which all activities are going to be critical, which all activities are not going to be critical, who will be the staff, who are going to be the senior staff members, who will be the audit partner, who will be the industry specialist, or any other expert who is going to support the audit. Yeah, so there were a lot of questions which one can say are going to arise as far as the audit planning is concerned, and those all form part of the audit strategy. Okay. And we also discussed that audit planning is not only about this planning of starting the work, but there are a lot of other procedures which will go behind the acceptance or the continuance of the audit engagement. Yeah, so all of those questions are also extremely important for any auditor to look at, basis which he'll design his overall audit plan. Okay, so we'll continue our discussion in relation to this audit plan, audit strategy, as well as the audit program. Yeah, so now in relation to the audit plan, we also discussed that when it comes to the audit plan, effectively we are just going to start the work. So we'll get into the discussions with the management, we'll perform inquiries with the management, we'll get onto the understanding of the business, we'll get into the understanding of the company. And we also talked about that when it comes to the understanding of the company, so for understanding the company, there are various processes which could be there in an organization. Yeah, there are various processes. So all of those processes are required to be understood. For example, sales process, marketing process, procurement process, payroll. Yeah, so all lot of processes are required to be understood, basis which will get on to the understanding of the audit, or maybe the engagement, or maybe the client that we are going to audit. Yeah, so this was briefly about what all things we have discussed so far. Let's quickly move on to the development of the audit plan. Now, in relation to the audit plan, we discussed that audit plan is more of a broad subject, and audit strategy, we can say, is a part of the overall audit plan. Yeah, so there is something which you can say is about planning the entire work, and around this planning, around this entire work, if we talk about any specific thing, okay, if we talk about any specific area, if we talk about a strategy which we'll use for the purposes of performing the audit, that is what you call as audit strategy also. Yeah, so we have already discussed this quite a lot. For example, we are also going to discuss in greater detail the risk assessment. Okay, we briefly touched upon this risk assessment, that when it comes to the audit, auditor will assess what are the risks. Auditor will also assess what are the significant areas, what are the critical areas. So all of these things, when it comes to the planning, so this will all form part of the audit plan. Yeah, clear? Yeah. All right, so let's look at some examples, and we'll just try to test our understanding of what we have covered so far. Okay, so let's pick up some examples, and you are required to answer this. I'm just hoping that you have revised everything that we discussed. Yeah, everyone, quickly please confirm. Yeah, quickly. So I think Arnoor is looking for the Zoom link. Maybe I think the link which you can get. Okay, great. So let's look at this question now. MG and Company is a firm of chartered accountants. They have a standing of 30 years. They are appointed as auditor of a company. So when it comes to the audit we discussed, that will be talking about the statutory audit always. Okay. Now this company is engaged in manufacturing of defense equipment. Due to opening of defense sector by the government to private players in the recent times, many new companies have entered the fray to manufacture sophisticated defense equipment. Considering technical and complex nature of operations, auditors recognize that involvement of expert in the audit will be required. Does the consideration for involvement of experts by the auditors fall in the domain, or you can say, should that really be considered as a planning process? Should that be considered as an activity which is related to planning? What are your thoughts? Over to you. Quickly, what are your thoughts? Now, in this case, what will you say? If you say yes, can you please also elaborate on this? I think Afzal and Meet have answered this. They are saying, yes, sir, absolutely. This should form part of audit planning. So if you say yes, so why do you think this will be a part of audit plan? Vaishnavi is saying yes, this should be the part of the audit planning only. Anirudh also says yes. Pawan says yes. Yes, quickly, yeah. Can you please elaborate on this? So why do you believe this is something which is going to be a part of audit planning only? Ritika is saying, yes, sir, as in the previous class, audit team included the IT specialists also. So that's why if you are going to involve as any specialist, so that is also form part of the engagement team. Great. Anirudh is saying that is important because through this, we'll get on to the reasonable assurance. Okay, great. So Joya is also saying yes. Harnoor is saying yes. It should be considered as they come in the purview of choosing an audit team. Yeah, very good. And I think this detailed explanation comes from Hardik. He says, yet it falls within the planning process. Why? Because experts are the one who are properly knowledgeable in those fields which are going to be required by the auditor to look at. And that's why they can really support the auditor in working this entire audit, or you can say in respect of various audit procedures which are required to be performed. Correct? All right. Now, moving on to the next question. Okay. Yeah. So let's move on to the next question. Okay. Before that, I can see this response coming in from Ram Nivas. Okay, great. Avinash is okay. So same response. Huh? Very good. CA Karthik is planning an audit, okay, which is for a company engaged in the manufacturing of cosmetics. Considering the nature of operations of the company, he had planned to include testing of controls over purchases, sales, inventories. Okay, one fine day, he reaches the corporate office and asks for the manuals and required documentation to ensure surprise element in the testing. He had never shared with the management his intention to carry out the above procedures. What do you think about the approach of CA Karthik? So do you believe the approach which he has picked up is appropriate? Yes, no, why please? Yeah, Anuj is saying no. He must share his intention. Pawan says no. Can you please also elaborate? Maybe when you are answering this yes or no. So that is what you will also be required to answer when you respond in the exam. Okay. So let's try to elaborate this. Okay. So Sudip says auditor must inform the management about his plan. Okay. Very good. So then Omkar says approach of the auditor is not proper. He should share his intention with the management without compromising the objective of the audit. Okay. Centra says no. Okay. Mohammed says no because he should disclose. Great. Krishna says because auditor has taken his own decision. So I think maybe some part you have missed out, Krishna. Yeah. Okay, so then I think this response comes from Harnoor. Harnoor says yes, he can ask any documents as it is his responsibility to give a true and fair view, and can ask any document anytime without any prior knowledge. Okay, that means without informing the management. All right. So Amit says auditor has to discuss every procedure before performing it. Okay, Mr. Ramnivas says yes, it can be done. Okay, Muskan is saying no, he should inform the management. Vaishnavi says he should discuss with the management before carrying out the procedures. I think Pallavi and Hasi, they are also saying no. All right, great. So Satakshi has the same answer. I think Anuruddh is sharing some thoughts. So he's saying auditor is an auditor. Okay, he's an auditor and he is not into any investigation. So that's why he should have a proper coordination with the management. He can raise questions. If not provided, then he can report. All right. But we are saying it's not proper. Okay, no worries. Okay, then I think Avinash says towards getting the information from the management, it is essential to disclose his intention. Okay, so now in this case, if you look at the approach of CA Karthik, that definitely doesn't seem to be proper. And there are certain reasons around. Okay, what are the reasons? See, when it comes to the audit, okay, so to keep an element of surprise is not bad. Okay, so there is no harm. But as far as the surprise element is concerned, surprise should not be like that management doesn't know, or maybe he can just reach to the client office at any point of time. Okay, though of course he can ask for information, he can ask for details, and he may not let the management know, client know that this is something which he's going to ask. But at the same time, at least a planning or the coordination of planning should be with the involvement of the client. So we cannot say that we'll just get into the audit plan, or maybe we'll just start the work without even letting the management know. Because at the end of the day, both the parties have to work together. Which are those parties? Company as well as the auditor. So if the company doesn't know anything and the auditors come up with surprises every time, so what will happen? Coordination will be significantly impacted. Okay. Plus, another important aspect is that this is not an investigation going on. So even if it comes to an investigation, so he may not know the management that he's going to check maybe this particular invoice, but he can at least know that he's going to visit the office wherein he will start the work, or maybe he'll pick up some area. So maybe the client personnel who are the relevant person in respect of that area may get to know. Okay, they may get to know about this plan. Okay, so that at least they can just keep themselves free, or maybe they can just manage some time which is also be required by the auditor. Yes or no? Yeah. So that's why in this case, clearly the approach is not appropriate. So he can definitely keep that element of surprise, no doubt. But at the same time, he should also be respecting the plan or maybe the workings of the management, and accordingly this should be done in a joint manner. Okay. Yeah. All right. So now let's talk something more as around this audit strategy and the audit plan. See, as we have already discussed, that audit strategy, even though this term is different from audit plan, but it's very much a part of the audit plan. Yes or no? Yes or no? So it's very much a part of the audit plan. When it comes to the audit strategy, so audit strategy is required. Why? Because for the scoping of the areas to be tested, for the timing, for the overall direction of the audit strategy is worked out. This is laid out. Okay. But the overall plan is going to explain, or you can say is going to lay out as to how this strategy will be implemented. Okay, so definitely there is a correlation. You can say there is a correlation between audit strategy and audit plan. And in very simple terms, we can say that audit plan is a broader term, wherein one part of this entire audit plan happens to be the audit strategy. So with that perspective, with that thought process, one should really approach as far as the audit planning is concerned, or maybe the understanding of audit strategy and audit planning is concerned, or maybe if you want to get into the discussion of the relationship between these two, so that is how you should understand that. Now, in respect of the audit strategy, or if we talk about audit plan, what is going to be the responsibility of the auditor? Of course, to chalk out the strategy, to lay out a plan. Yeah. So this overall strategy and the audit plan, whose responsibility is that? Of course, the auditor. Yeah. He is responsible for establishing overall audit strategy. He is responsible for development of the audit plan. Now, why is this important? Or why is this that we are focusing on this part? Because when it comes to the audit, so there are going to be two groups. So let's understand that. Now, what are those two groups? So this is the audit team and this is the company. As we have discussed that for this audit activity to happen, a coordination between these two is required. No audit can be performed without the audit team, and no audit can be performed without the company personnel. So both of them are required. Otherwise, how will this audit get completed? So that's why when it comes to the planning, so this planning has to be discussed with the management also. So management should understand what is going to be the plan, what are going to be the key risk areas, what are going to be the significant areas, what are going to be the important areas as far as auditor is concerned. Okay, so auditor is not going to hide that. Yeah, because there's no fraud investigation going on. But as far as the strategy is concerned and audit plan is concerned, because this is a part of the audit activity, you can say this is the part of the overall audit process. That's why even if the company or the management, even though they are involved in respect of various audit activities, the end responsibility for this entire audit work remains with whom? Auditor. Remains with whom? Auditor. So auditor is going to be responsible for that, and that's why audit planning, which is nothing but a part of audit process, that will also be remaining with the auditor always. So auditor cannot say that because the management was involved in the planning, management was involved in a lot of activities, so that's why this is not my responsibility. No. End responsibility for that happens to be that of the auditor always. Okay. Let's try to understand this with the help of this example also. W, the auditor of SKM Limited, asks its finance and audit head to prepare audit strategy for conducting audit of SKM Limited. W also insists him to draw detailed audit procedures. On the request of the auditor, W completes audit strategy. Okay, W completes audit strategy as well as audit procedures as prepared by the finance head of the company. Subsequently, auditor realizes that effectiveness of the audit is compromised. Okay. effectiveness of the audit is compromised, and it was his responsibility to prepare the overall audit strategy. Now, in this case, let me just try to explain you the perspective here. W, who is W? Auditor of this company. So, who is the company? SKM Limited. Who is the auditor? W. So, there is a finance team of SKM Limited involved. Yeah. Okay. And the audit head. So, that means auditor. Who is the auditor? W. You can say the audit partner is W. And there's an audit head. Maybe let's suppose there is the manager. Okay. Now, what is going to be the role of the manager? To prepare audit strategy. So, he will prepare the audit strategy. Okay. And W also insists him to draw detailed audit procedures, which is fine. Yeah. On the request of the auditor, W completes audit strategy, yeah, as well as audit procedures, as prepared by the finance head of the company. Subsequently, what has happened? Auditor realizes, okay, subsequently what has happened? Auditor realizes effectiveness of the audit is compromised. So now in this case, let's try to understand the concern. See, if the effectiveness of the audit is compromised, okay, now as far as the audit is concerned, as far as its effectiveness is concerned, let's try to understand this audit. For the audit process, forget about audit planning or anything related to, say, detailed audit procedures, audit strategy. So can you tell me, for this entire audit process, who is responsible? Tell me, who is responsible for the entire audit process? Auditor? Yes or no? So this entire audit process is responsibility of the auditor. Always. Yes or no? Now, in this case, if there is anything as around the audit procedures, as around the audit strategy, if let's suppose that's been discussed with the management, okay, or maybe let's suppose management suggests that you should check this, or maybe you should also look into this, you should ignore that. Can the auditor go with that? Yes, of course, auditor can consider that. Auditor can always consider the thought process of the management. Auditor can also consider the views of the management. Yeah. But if let's suppose there is any problem as far as those views are concerned, or if let's suppose those views of the management has any impact as far as this audit process is concerned, or you can say has got any negative impact as far as that audit process is concerned. So can the auditor go and blame the management for that? Tell me, can the auditor go and blame the management for that? Tell me. Yeah, tell me. Virender says no, Ritika says no, Ratimalani is saying no. Yes, very good. Now, that's why it's important to understand that, because the end responsibility for this audit process rests with whom? That is with the auditor. So that's why if there is any problem in relation to any of the audit activities, now please remember, I'm just talking about this entire audit process. I'm not really talking about the audit planning or audit strategy. Yeah, because even if you move further, okay, so I'm not limited to audit planning or say audit strategy. So anything as far as the audit is concerned has to be of whom? That has to be of the auditor always. And that's why its responsibility will always fall on the auditor. Okay, it will always fall on the auditor. Clear on this? Yeah, clear on this, everyone? Yeah, everyone clear on this? Yeah, okay, great. So now let me just also bring in one case scenario and let me just try to discuss that with you. Okay, let's suppose, say there is a company AB Limited. Yeah. And this company has got some IT systems. So this company is on SAP. SAP, you can say, is the IT system of the company. Okay. Now, auditor of this company, Ram and Company, during their audit meeting, they decided that Ram and Company also had they had a partner. Okay, so there are various partners in this firm, and there was also a partner who is IT specialist. So you can say there is a IT partner. Okay, so the audit partner decided that he will also involve IT partner. Why? Because for the purposes of audit of this company, as far as their IT systems are concerned, yeah, so a lot of complexity, technicality could be involved. So that's why IT partner will support in respect of those areas. Okay. And accordingly, the audit strategy was chalked out. So during the planning meetings, during the planning discussions, during the meetings when the strategy was laid out, in respect of all of these things, audit partner was always involved. He was always involved. Okay. Further, at the time of execution and various other procedures which were performed, audit partner remained involved. Okay. Now, I have a question for you. Yeah. Now, considering the fact that Ram and Company is a partnership firm. Okay. So Ram and Company is a partnership firm wherein if let's suppose there's a partner who specializes in audit. Okay. So let me just name this partner, say he is A. And let's suppose there is another partner, say B, who specializes in IT. Okay, and there are various other partners. So we are not talking about those partners right now. So we are saying there are two partners. Both of them are the partners of the firm and they have got equal authority in the firm. Yes or no? In the firm, they have equal authority. Why? Because they are equal partners. Now, if there is anything as far as this audit is concerned, whose responsibility should that be? Should that be the responsibility of A only? Or should this responsibility be shared between A and B? Why? Because both of them are part of audit team and both of them are partners of this partnership firm. So tell me, what are your thoughts and the reasons for the same? Aditi says it should be shared. Okay. Kishore says it should be A. What about others? Quickly. Pranav says it should be shared. Niveta says A only. Aisha says it should be shared. Okay. Muskan says it should be shared. So I can see mixed responses. Huh? So Isha, Bhavya, they are saying it should be shared. Anuradha says it should be shared. Sudip says it should lie with the auditor only. Pawan says it should be shared, and I think same is the responsible from Angel also. Okay, Sheikh says it should be A only, as he is the auditor. Okay, so Joya says both are responsible. Okay, Harnoor says A only. Ram Nivas says A only. Avinash says both will be liable as they are the partners. Okay, Akriti says only A because it's the auditor's responsibility. So now let's try to understand here. Now in this case, please remember that tomorrow when the audit report will be signed. Okay, I'm just discussing this with you. Why? Because I have seen mixed responses. So I think half of you said that it should be shared between these two partners, A and B. Now tell me one thing, that tomorrow when this audit report will be signed, so who is going to sign this? Is it A or B or A and B both? Tell me. Who is going to sign this? Mehak says A. Rishita says A. Okay, great. Yeah, Virender says A. Nuruddin says A. Great. So now tell me one thing, that if A is going to sign this, then please remember that the person who will sign the audit report, he is the one who is responsible for the audit. Why? Because he is the audit partner. Audit partner may involve a lot of experts. Now, those experts could be the partners in the firm, or they could be various experts, maybe more experienced, more senior to him. They could also be chartered accountants. But in such a case, can this partner A, after signing the audit report, pass on his responsibility to those other persons? Is it possible for him to pass on that responsibility to other persons? Meet says no. Virender says no. And I can now see that almost everyone is saying no. Then tell me one thing, that Malu is saying no, that why should this responsibility be shared then? Can you now understand? Can you now understand? Yes or no? Yeah, can you now understand that this cannot be shared? This cannot be shared. This has to be the responsibility of the audit partner always. Clear? Everyone? Yes, quickly, huh? Everyone clear on this? All right. So before we move further, any questions, any doubts if you have? Okay, Malu and Niketna, they are clear. Okay, so Devdas is saying, sir, can you please explain again? Yes, sure. See, when it comes to the audit, whose responsibility will that be? That will be the responsibility of the audit partner. Why? Because the person who is signing the audit report, who is that? Audit partner. Audit partner. And you may call him as audit partner because it's a partnership firm, or he could be a auditor. Yeah, he could be an auditor. Yeah, he could be a proprietor. So it's not necessarily that it should be a partner always. In the context of this example, we are saying that it has to be the responsibility of the audit partner always. Why? Because he is going to sign the audit report. Later on, once he has done the audit, once he has signed the audit report, he cannot just simply pass on his responsibility. Why? Because all of these things were responsibility of the audit partner always. For carrying out his work, he took the support of a lot of persons, which you call as audit team or the engagement team, which could involve various specialists, whether those are in-house or outside the firm. Okay. Angel says, but the audit team includes IT partner and the entire team will be responsible. No. See, the entire audit team will not be responsible. Who will be responsible? Auditor. And what do you mean by auditor? The person who signs the audit report. Okay. Hardik is asking, sir, if the auditor and the finance head in the illustration to make the audit plan, then is it the case of agreed upon procedures or no? No. Because the moment you use this word audit plan, you are calling it as an audit. Okay. If you are calling this as agreed upon procedures, then at the first place, you should remember that it cannot be an audit. Please understand. Huh? Okay. Clear? All right. Any more questions before we move further? Yes, quickly. Huh? Quickly, any questions, any doubts if you have? No? All right. So now let's move further. Let's try to discuss some more situations. All right. So now let's suppose audit of a company is going on. Okay. And at the time of planning, what had happened? At the time of planning, 3 areas were considered to be quite critical. So what were those areas? PPE, inventory, and third was revenue. Fine. So this was the plan initially. So these were the 3 significant areas which were identified by the auditor that these are going to be critical. Okay. Time plan to complete the audit, you can say, was 2 months. So there were 2 months to complete the audit. Audit planning took a lot of time. Okay. So now in respect of audit planning, team spent good 20 days. Okay. So team took good 20 days to complete the audit plan. Fine. Now, currently execution is going on. Okay. So execution, which is also called as field work, means the team is there at the client place and executing the work, means they are performing the various audit procedures. Currently, this is what is going on. All right. So this is what is going on currently. Yeah. Now, during the course of audit, what has happened? So there's an article in the audit team. There's an article in the audit team. Article means intern. So there is an intern in the audit team. He had a discussion with the client personnel. And on the basis of his discussion with the client personnel, he found that during the year, there are certain matters which have come up as far as the income tax is concerned. Okay. So there are some litigations, there are some matters as around income tax, which have sort of initiated against the company. Okay. And in turn, because he is something not really an expert as far as this area is concerned, he took this matter to the senior and he discussed with him. And both of them assessed that this area is going to be critical. Okay, so they assessed that this area is going to be critical. Why? Because its impact is going to be huge. Its impact is going to be huge as far as the financial statements of the clients are concerned. Now, tell me one thing. that audit team has already spent 20 days. Okay, so they have spent good 20 days on the audit plan. And the audit plan is also documented. So they have noted it everywhere. They have chalked out their audit strategy. They have created the audit plan on the basis of these three areas. Now, at a later stage, if this article, okay, or maybe say this trainee, or maybe let's suppose the audit team picks up another area, and if they believe no, this is something which is a significant area for the audit is concerned, so should we consider this to be an error in the audit planning? Okay, so I have got few options which you can consider. Should we consider that there was some error in the audit planning at the initial stage? Should we say that no, even if this area is considered to be significant, this cannot be taken up for the current year's audit? This has to be looked at in the next year's now. Why? Because plan is all finalized, work is all going on, and good time has been spent on the audit planning. Or that this third area, if this comes up at this later stage, this is still okay. So auditor should consider it, consider its impact, and accordingly reassess their audit planning. What do you think? What do you think should be done by the auditor in such a case? Vandana says it should be considered, plan should be modified. Omkar says no, sir. It won't be considered as an error. Okay, yeah. Pranav says yes, it's important, it has to be considered. What about others? Dilip says plan needs to be modified now. Yes, very good. So please remember, though we touched upon this point, that planning is something which is going to be a continuous process. We just simply can't say that initially when we started the work, okay, so our plan was what? To complete the work within a period of 2 months. Yes or no? So during this entire period, the planning will be going on. So even if some part of the plan has been finalized, say at the initial stage, that doesn't mean that we will become rigid. Of course, the plan has to be assessed properly. On the basis of plan, a lot of other activities have to follow, no doubt. But during the course of our audit, during the course of execution, if something comes up which may require this planning to be reassessed, then this reassessment becomes mandatory. So we can't just simply ignore that. If we ignore that, that will become an error. Understood? If we ignore that, that ignorance will be considered to be an error. And I think same was the response from Avinash, Mohit, Joya, Prajwal. Okay, yeah, Basavaraju. Great. All right. So now, another important aspect around the audit work, around the audit planning, happens to be the review. Happens to be the review. Now, please remember that in this particular scenario which we talked about, okay, so there were two persons. Who were the persons? So this was the intern, and this, let's suppose, was the audit manager. Yeah. So now, whenever it comes to the audit, or whenever it comes to the audit work, it is extremely important that the work of the junior staff is reviewed by the senior staff member. Why is that important? Can you tell me? Yes, tell me. Why is that important? Should we say that otherwise junior staff will not perform the work? Tell me, why is that important? Why should that be done? Meet says because the junior staff would not be so experienced as the senior staff would be. Yeah. So that's why if this review will take place, so this will bring in, so this will increase effectiveness of the audit. So audit effectiveness will increase. Yeah. So the quality of work. Okay. So the quality of work will improve. And further, if you look at the junior staff, they need somebody who can guide them. It's not only about review, they also need supervision, they also need guidance. Okay, so if they are guided properly, so what will happen? That will help the entire audit process. So that's why that guidance is extremely important throughout the course of audit. Okay, and it's not something which is only be required by the intern. So if we, let's suppose, talk about this similar situation, there will also be a third person over here. Now who will be that third person? So there is another person, say this is audit partner. Okay, yeah. So now both these persons will also be needing the support of audit partner. Why? Because audit partner will also be supporting the audit manager. Yeah. So you can just simply say that when it comes to the audit, it's a teamwork. It's a teamwork. And the coordination between the team is extremely important. And what do you mean by coordination? Coordination means they should be talking to each other. They should be reaching out to each other. Whenever any junior staff requires any support, they should reach out to their senior members. And whenever any senior staff require anything to be conducted, to be performed, to be carried out, so they will involve the junior staff for the support. Only then the work will be completed. Yeah. So now this supervision, this review, this will again be dependent on the type of the work which is there, nature of the client which is there, size of the client which is there. Yeah. And the complexity which has been assigned to the relevant team member. Accordingly, all of these areas are required to be looked at. Yeah. But of course, when it comes to the audit, it's an extremely important part as far as the audit is concerned. If this is not assessed properly, if this is not looked at properly, then what will happen? Chances are this is going to have an impact on the overall audit quality. Yeah, so the overall audit quality may go down. Clear? Clear on this? Any questions so far? Any doubts if you have? Quickly. Okay, so Prajwal says, so review tells us how we will audit. Yes, of course. And before the review, there will also be a guidance. So that's why you'll have a plan. That's why you'll have a plan. But during the course of execution of the plan, you can say when you will implement the plan, again, a lot of challenges may arise. And that's where that continued guidance and the review both will support the audit process. Because objective is what? To perform the audit activity or this entire audit process in an effective manner. Yeah, clear? Any questions if you have? Okay, great. Omkar has a question. Omkar is asking, sir, if there are 5 partners in the audit team and all of them are chartered accountants, who will bear the responsibility of the audit then? Great. So let's try to understand the question of Omkar. I can see some sort of confusion over there. Okay. So let's suppose there's a firm. In this firm, there are 5 partners. Say P1, P2, P3, P4, P5. Now, when it comes to a company, so let's suppose there is a company A Limited. Now, what will happen? A Limited will appoint the firm. So, say this firm was F and Company. Now, when the firm is appointed as the auditor, so firm will also designate one audit partner. Now, in this case, let's suppose P1 is designated as the audit partner. So what does it mean? That P1 will handle the audit of A Limited. P1 will sign the audit report of A Limited. Okay. Now, if you look at this audit firm, all of them, P1, P2, P3, P4, P5, they are all partners. And let's suppose they are all chartered accountants. So now, because the P1 is the audit partner, that's why who will be responsible for this audit? P1. Let's suppose for any reason, all the partners are involved in the audit of A Limited. Though generally you will not see this happening. But let's assume this happens, that all the partners are involved in the audit. Even in that case, who will be responsible? P1, because he is going to be the one who will sign the audit report. Okay, clear on this? Yeah, Omkar, I'm hoping you are clear on this. Yeah. All right. So then Ritika has a question. Ritika is saying, sir, in case there are 2 auditors auditing a firm, and in case of ineffectiveness, then who will be responsible? See, if there are 2 different firms, then of course both the firms are responsible, because there will be 2 persons signing the audit report. Yeah. Aditi says the one who considers the company did analysis, have conversation with the company and take the responsibility, then no, see, you can just simply understand that the one who is signing the audit report is the one who is the person who is going to be responsible. Yeah. Omkar is asking, sir, understood. That means only the designated partner. You can say that partner who will sign the audit. Okay. Pallavi is asking, responsibility lies on whom? Who signs? Yes. Yeah. Muskan is saying, but sir, if all of them are responsible for audit, then why will just P1 sign? Because that's what they will agree. They will discuss, and that's how this partnership firm will work. Because if let's suppose this firm audits 20 companies, then each partner will be signing some or other company. So that's how this will be working. Okay. Meet is saying, can 2 partners sign? Yes. If there are 2 firms appointed. So for each firm, 1 partner will sign. Okay. Pranav is asking only the team leader and the engagement partner. Engagement partner is responsible. VR is asking, sir, if only one from the audit team signs the audit report, is it enough? Yes, of course. See, audit report is signed by only 1 person as far as the audit team is concerned. So I think let me just clarify around some of these types of doubts as well. So let's suppose there is another company. Yeah? Say there is PQR Limited. Say PQR has appointed 2 firms, A and company, B and company. Okay, these 2 are the auditors of PQR Limited. Now, A and company will appoint, or you can say will designate one person. Say that is A. B and company will also designate one person. Why? Because from the firm, one person will have to sign the audit report. Yeah. So A will sign report of PQR Limited on behalf of A and company. B will sign report of PQR Limited on behalf of B and company. So that's how it works. But when it comes to A and company, so to answer your question, can two partners sign the report? No. Two partners from the same firm, they cannot sign. So one partner from one firm will have to be designated as the engagement partner, or you can say as the audit partner who will sign the audit. Okay. Now clear, everyone? Yeah, everyone clear? Okay, great. So it appears that everyone is now clear on this. All right. So now what we can do is maybe we can just pick up another very, very important part of the audit. Now, as around the audit, there's a concept that we call as audit documentation. Okay. So this concept of documentation, even though you are going to cover in greater detail as you move further, but we are just touching upon this concept now. We have already talked about this documentation earlier also, and this is something which we are going to repeat. And you can say this is the most important element as far as any audit is concerned. Can anyone tell me, if you remember, what is the meaning of documentation? Over to you. Can anyone tell me what is the meaning of documentation? Quickly. Pranav says to give in writing. Dilip says writing. So what do you mean by to give in writing? Writing. Asha says all the work performed by the auditor. Hardik says if the auditor doesn't follow the auditing standards. Rachna says recording, keeping a track. Meet says proof. Ria says preparing the notes while auditing. Ramya says evidence. Okay, so Angel says recording of audit plan. All right, so now what is documentation? In very simple terms, if I have to just relate to this point, see, currently this session which has been going on, so you have been discussing this session with me, yes or no? So I'm sure that while this session is going on, I'm not saying this for everyone, some of you must be preparing your notes. VR says yes. By notes, I mean to say that some of you would be writing some of the points that I'm just speaking. Some of you would be writing most of the points that I'm speaking. Yes or no? Quickly, please confirm. And some of you would be looking for the notes, or you can say written down notes of whatever I am discussing right now. Why? Because you would say that no, we don't want to write that on our own. Okay, we just want to concentrate maybe on this more. Why? Because you believe that you can just do this later on, number one. Or you may think that all of these presentations will come to you, which will serve as a note for you. Correct? Yeah. So you can understand that the documentation is somewhat similar to this notes which you prepare. I'm not saying exactly similar, but somewhat similar. So what does it mean? That while you will be doing the audit, while you will be performing the audit procedures, everything and anything that you'll do, everything that you'll do, you are required to note that down. Now, this again could be on a piece of paper. So you can say it could be in hard copy, or this could be, say, noted down, say in a Word file, in an Excel sheet, in a PowerPoint, okay? Or maybe say with the help of such type of notes, whichever medium you want to follow, you can follow that. It could be in hard or soft, but everything that you will do, you need to note it down. If let's suppose you prepare the plan, you prepare the audit strategy, you write down, you'll note down that these three are my important areas, these are not going to be the important areas. This is how my team will be structured. So this is going to be my time plan. Remember, we discussed one audit plan in the previous session. There was an Excel spreadsheet I discussed with you. Remember? Yeah, so there was an Excel file we discussed. Everyone remembers that? Yeah. So now that Excel working or that Excel file was what? That was the documentation of the audit plan. Yeah, because tomorrow if somebody will ask the auditor that where is your audit plan, auditor can go and show that this is what I prepared. Okay, this is what I did, or this is how I did. Understood? So this is what you call as documentation. Now, there is a saying, or a very, very important saying, that whatever is not documented is not done. So what does it mean? If let's suppose you have done some work, I'm talking about the audit work right now, but let's suppose you have not documented that. Why? Because you knew. So maybe you performed inquiries, you had discussions with the management, but you didn't note it down, you didn't write it, you didn't maybe note it anywhere. So will you call it as documented? No. So it is considered that such work is not done. So later on you may say that no, I understand everything, I know verbally everything, but still that will be considered to be not done. Yeah. So such is the importance of documentation. So that's why you should consider this as a rule. So whenever you will perform the audit, you have to just make sure that each and everything around that is documented in an appropriate manner. Okay. Now, when it comes to the audit planning, so far all of those things that we have discussed, whether it is about audit strategy, audit planning, timeline, scope, all lot of stuff, please remember that all of those things are also required to be documented. Okay, clear on this? Now I think we can discuss some examples around this. Yeah, Ramya is asking, sir, who will prepare this audit documentation? The one who will do the audit work. So can you tell me that who will do the audit work? Ramya, yes. Who will be doing the audit work? Tell me. Ramya says audit team. So that's why they will be documenting that. So it will not happen that audit manager will do something and he will ask the intern or maybe someone else to document that. Or if they do that, that will be again planned. Why? Because they're team. So they will be working together. It's a collective effort that they will be following. But each and everything as around the audit is responsibility of whom? As far as the procedures are concerned, audit team. So that's why this entire documentation, who will be responsible for that? Audit team. So they will be required to perform this. Okay, clear? So they will be required to perform this. So now we can look at some examples around this. All right, so let's look at this example now. CA Mary, while planning audit of a company, feels that she would inquire from in-house legal counsel of the company status of pending litigation matters against the company to identify and assess risk of material misstatement. Now, what do you mean by risk of material misstatement? That there is a risk. Risk of material misstatement means risk that the financial statements could have material errors. Okay. Misstatement, if you remember, we discussed means mistakes or errors. Material, you all understand, na? Yeah. All right. So now considering the above, are you able to identify the said procedures? Where these identified, whether these identified procedures are included in planning in accordance with the requirements of auditing standards. Over to you. What is your thought? Yes, quickly. What are your thoughts? Quickly, yeah. Everyone. In this case, what are your thoughts? So now CA is planning the audit and she feels that she would inquire from in-house legal counsel. In-house means who is there in the company as around the pending litigations. So in this case, what do you think? Okay, so Pranav says, no, these procedures are not included in the planning because she is consulting the in-house legal counsel. Omkar says these are planned risk assessment procedures to identify and assess the risk of material misstatement. So what do you mean by this? So now, should you be considering that and should you be also documenting that? Tell me. Quickly, yeah, please. What do you think? What are your thoughts? Okay, so Amit is saying yes, it's included in. All right, so Sai says yes. Dilip says inquiries from the management. Then I think Rishita says it should be included. Angel says yes, this is very much a part of the planning. Hardik says it should be documented. Okay, Pallavi says this should form part of audit plan. All right. Then I think Subhra says that we will document because it's an inquiry made. Now, in this case, please understand that these are the procedures performed in relation to assessment of risk. Okay, now assessment of risk for the time being, we can just simply say is all about the planning work or the planning of the assessment, or you can say the assessment of the risk. Risk in relation to what? That the financial statements may contain some errors. The objective of this inquiry is to identify and assess the risk. Now, when it comes to the audit planning, please remember, when it comes to the audit planning, we discussed that the planning doesn't mean that only the audit team will have some discussions internally and the planning is completed. No. When it comes to the planning, company will also be involved. So planning will involve a lot of things. What does it include? Understanding about the company. Inquiries from the management. So how is that possible? Only and only when audit team will be interacting with the client. So that means when it comes to the audit planning, if the auditor decides to interact with the team of the client, so just because it's an interaction with the team of the client, so that's why we should not say it's an audit plan. No, This is very much a part of the audit procedure only. And as far as the audit procedure is concerned, this is very much a part of the planning. Why? Because till the time this discussion will not happen, auditor will not got to know what are the risks which are there in relation to this pending litigation. If the auditor wants to assess the risk, he needs to understand the subject matter. Yes or no? He needs to assess the subject matter. Only when the subject matter will be understood, he will get to understand what could be the risk, whether that is important or not so important. What could be the errors which may be there in the financial statements as around that particular matter. Okay, clear? All right, so now moving further, so let's pick up one more question. CA Shubhendu is the statutory auditor of a social media company. Due to change in information technology regulations by the government, it has become mandatory for such companies to constitute grievance redressal mechanism for the users of social media platform of the company. Failure to comply with regulations can potentially lead to civil and criminal liabilities against the company. Okay, yeah. So that's the understanding as far as this regulation is concerned. So the company is mandatorily required to constitute this grievance redressal mechanism. So it's a system which is required to be set up. Okay, and this system is going to be internal to the company. Means internally company needs to set up this system. Fine. If this is not set up, then what is the implication? Liabilities could arise on the part of the company. Okay, now the question is, should this factor be considered by the auditor while framing his or her audit strategy? Over to you. What do you think? What do you think? And please give me the rationale. Okay, Krishna says yes. What do you think? Yes, quickly. Pawan is saying yes because it's related to the legal existence. Rishita says yes, but can you please elaborate this? Krishna, can you please elaborate? Can you please let me know as to why this should be yes? Virender says yes, mandatory. Can you also let me know the reason why you are saying this to be yes? Meet is saying it's an important factor, but why is this important? Can you tell me? Okay, so Sudip says auditor must consider every possibility while framing the audit strategy. Pranav says yes, because failure of such compliance will lead to liabilities against the company. All right, so Mithun says yes, it should be considered by the auditor because it's a government regulation. What about others? Okay, so Muskan says every aspect should be considered. Then Ratmalini is saying yes, because it's legal and mandatory. Amit is saying obviously the auditor has to consider this matter while framing the strategy. It is related with the company as far as the rules and regulations are concerned. Okay, so its failure is going to have an impact. So Ilaya says yes, it's important because failure leads to civil and criminal liability. All right, so let's try to understand this. See, changes in laws and regulations, or you can say an understanding around the laws and regulations. Not only the changes, but the understanding of the laws and regulations. Is that the responsibility of the auditor? Or should we say that is that something which the auditor should look at? Of course. Why? Because if the auditor wants to understand about the company, understand the environment which impacts the company, so laws and regulations are going to be important. Okay. Now, in the given case, whether you look at the laws and regulations or the changes, we discussed that both of them are required to be understood by the auditor. But if there is any matter, if there is any process which can have a financial impact, then that becomes all the more important for the auditor. Why? Because auditor will be responsible for the opinion of financial statements. And if there comes a financial liability, as it says, liabilities may arise. So liability is going to be a financial liability. Yeah. So if this liability arises, so will this have an impact on the financial statements or not? Yeah. Now the auditor needs to understand whether this impact will be significant or not. Whether that impact will be significant or not. That's why it's understanding it's important. And only when the auditor will understand that, he will be able to evaluate. He will be able to evaluate as to how is it going to deal with this particular area. Yeah. So that's why, as far as the overall audit strategy is concerned, this is going to be an extremely important area. Yes or no? Yeah. All the more important. Why? Because its non-compliance is going to have a impact on the financial statements. Clear on this? Everyone clear? Okay, so I can see this response from Ramnivas also. He says every possible overcomes. I think he's talking about some of these factors. Huh? So they need to be considered by the auditor. All right. Any questions, any doubts if you have, please let me know. Because then we'll take a short break, and after the break we'll move on to the audit program. Yes, quickly. And any questions, any doubts if you have so far? Any questions? No? Okay. So I can see this. Any questions? So I can see. All right. So Hardik is asking, sir, can you please explain the factors that the auditor that in the auditor's professional judgment are significant in directing the team effort? See, there are a lot of factors. Okay, so it's not limited to one of the factors, but some of the factors which can drive this will be about the size of the company, nature of the business, what are going to be the critical areas, what all changes have arisen during the year, as far as the company is concerned, as far as its activities are concerned, as far as its contractual arrangements are concerned, as well as far as the entire environment are concerned. Okay, so a whole lot of these activities, or you can say on the of the understanding of the company, all of those factors may vary. Yeah. Okay, so then I think this next question comes from Aditi. Aditi is saying, sir, whether the auditor who signs the documentation or the team would be responsible as conclusion. See, when it comes to the audit responsibility means who is going to be responsible for the end audit? It's the audit partner. And who is the audit partner? Who signs the audit? But when it comes to a lot of procedures, a lot of activities as far as audit are concerned, when it comes to documentation, when it comes to performing procedures, audit planning, so therein it's a team which is working on that collectively. So that's why all of them are responsible, and that's how they document their roles and responsibility. And that is what audit plan is all about. That is what audit strategy is all about. Okay. Then I think Ritika is asking, sir, my question is that I am able to answer you. Can I assume that I'll be able to write that the answer? Write the answer. Of course, so if you are able to answer this here, why will not you will not be able to answer that in the exam? Of course, you'll be able to do that. Yeah. So the important part is to understand the concept. If you understand the concept, then of course you will be able to answer everything. Manvi Singh, sir, can you please explain that question shortly? Yes, sure. So now this question was about a company wherein there was some changes in the rules and regulations. Okay. And the point was that if the company doesn't follow rules and regulations, then the company can have some consequences, means some liabilities could arise on the company. So the question was that should the auditor be looking into those rules and regulations? Okay. And the answer was, of course, yes. It becomes important on the part of the auditor to look into all of those things. Yeah. All right. Yeah. I think some of you are asking about civil and criminal liability. So you can just simply say that a financial impact could arise on the company. So let's not get into that technicality, what civil liability will arise, what criminal liability will arise. You can just simply say that some liability, some financial impact could arise on the company. So auditor has to just look into that. He has to just make sure that its impact is considered by the auditor. Now, what sort of liability is that, which under which section it will arise, under which section we need to, all of those technicalities are not there. So we don't need to get into that. Yeah, clear on this? All right. So I think we can take a short break now. Yeah. So let's meet after the break. Okay. So let's continue with our discussion. All right. So now we'll just be talking about this audit program. Now, as far as this audit program is concerned, even though it's a different topic, but please understand it's no different from the audit planning. So let's quickly try to understand about this definition, and with the help of an example, then we'll try to understand as to what is an audit program and why do we believe that it's nothing but a part of audit plan only. Okay, so it's a list. Yeah, so what is an audit program? It's a list of what? Various steps for examination verification. So it's a list which contains various steps which will be applied and set out in a way that interrelationship of one step to another is clearly shown and designed, keeping in view the assertions discernible in the statement of account produced for an audit. So, and you can see a lot of technical words which are used. Yeah. Then it says an audit program consists of a series of verification procedures. It's a detailed plan of applying the audit procedures. And of course, there are a lot of technical terms which are then followed. So let's try to understand this. What is an audit program? So what I'm trying to do is I'll just try to create an audit program. And in relation to the audit program, maybe what we can do is we can just quickly look at this program or planning document. If you remember, we discussed this in the previous session also. Quickly, if you can just look at it. Yeah, can you everyone see this? Yeah, so you remember that in this document, there were certain areas which were specified, then the person who will do this work, who will review this work, timeline, a lot of these stuffs were noted down. Remember, everyone? Yeah, great. Okay, so now let's do one thing. Let's try to create an audit program. Okay, so what we will do is we'll just try to create an audit program. Now, what is an audit program? Audit program is a list. Remember, it's a list. In the list, what do we have? List of various procedures. Now, let's talk about our financial statements. For our financial statements, what are going to be the various activities that you can think of which will be required for performing the audit? Quickly, over to you, everyone. Can you please share various activities which come to your mind, which will be important for the audit of a financial statements? So Vaishnavi is saying verification of inventory, Meet says vouching, Pranav say debtors, external verification. Great. So what I'll do is, whatever you are mentioning, I'll just make a note of that. Inventory verification. All right. So then you say vouching. Virender says revenue. Okay. Rachana says payslip. Okay. Ritika is saying eligibility of the auditors. All right. Then I think Bhaskar is talking about checking of liabilities and debtors. All right. Dilip is saying verification of important documents. No problem. So let me just write that point also. Verification of important documents. Ritika is saying checking of invoices. Okay. Yeah. So I think these many points are good enough. Okay. I'll note down one more point. Elias says PPE. Great. Yeah. So now what I've done is all the points which you have specified, I've just noted down. Okay. So let's suppose currently all of us are sitting together. Let's imagine this. Okay. Let's suppose all of us are sitting together. You may be thinking, but sir, actually we are sitting together. No. Let's assume that we are planning for an audit of financial statements of a company. Yeah. So let me just say that this company is what? So let me just write the name of this company. Say this is ABC Limited. And let's suppose we are discussing about audit of financial statements of this company for financial year 23-24. Yeah. So let me just see, and you can just also understand as to what you will do when it comes to the documentation. Okay. Yeah. So what we are trying to do is we are just trying to create an audit program. So what is an audit program? A program of audit. Now, at the first place, we'll write the name of the client, then we'll write the period for which the financial statements will be audited, and then we'll also write the scope. Scope we understand is the audit of financial statements for the year ended 31st March 2024. Yes or no? Yeah. So then, what is the next thing you'll write in this program? Now, please remember, it's the audit planning which is going. So we have not completed the audit. Remember, we have not completed the audit. We are just sitting together. Yeah. So maybe some of you are chartered accountants, some of you are interns, say there is an engagement partner, and we have also got various experts. Say an IT expert is there, tax expert is there, a lot of persons are there. So they are just trying to put together their thoughts as to during the course of our audit, what all should we do? Yeah, so that's how the discussion will go. That's how the discussion will start. Yes or no? Quickly, everyone, please keep confirming up. That's how the discussion will be going on. Yes or no? Great. So now, during the course of our discussions, a lot of things have been discussed. And what are those things? We discussed about the company. We also discussed that it's a continuation. So we are going to continue with our audit. And we also discussed that last year there were some problems, there were some areas which are critical. Okay, there were some challenges. We also discussed that last time the management didn't support on particular areas, didn't support on some of the areas. Okay, how should we deal with those challenges if they continue? Yeah, so some of these things we have already discussed. And now, on the basis of our discussions, we are going to strategize this. Strategize means we have formed a strategy. Okay, and in terms of the strategy, what we are trying to do is we are just trying to put down everything. So we are saying that let's pick up one area. Okay, so let's suppose we call this area as inventory. Yeah. So now, as regards inventory, let's suppose Virender says that inventory is an important area, sir. Okay, let's suppose I am a chartered accountant sitting in the meeting and I am, let's suppose, the senior member of the audit. So you're saying, sir, it's an important area. So what do we need? So Virender says that we need to consider this area to be important. Yeah. So we'll write whether this area is significant or not significant. So in our audit program, the second category will be whether this is significant or not. So Virender is saying, no, sir, last year we faced a lot of problems in relation to this particular area. So that's why we'll have to keep this as important. Yeah. Very good. So we made this important, and that's how every team member agreed. Yeah. Okay. Now comes the question that if this area is important, then what is going to be the procedures on this? Yeah. So what all things will check as far as inventory is concerned? So that's the second question. So that's where I think you can tell me. So Hardik is saying valuation. Okay. So means verification is required. Yeah. So verification around what? Valuation. So valuation is required to be tested. Okay. So can you think of some other procedures which will be important for the inventory? Omkar is saying, how can you ignore physical verification? Yes, very good. So physical verification. Okay. Then I think Pranav says that external confirmation will also be required. But I think by external confirmation, you mean to say the physical verification only. Yeah. Then I think one person mentioned that purchases will also be required to be tested. Purchases will also be required to be tested. Correct? Yeah. All right. So then what was the next thing? Now, as around the next thing was that if all of these things will be tested, then what is it that we will pick up? Okay, what will become the basis? So, which means that for verification, there will be a working file, or you can say the valuation file will be provided by the client. For physical verification, what will happen? Client will share a plan to be received from the company. So company will let us know what all inventory items they will have. Yeah. So for purchases, we'll obtain the purchase register. Purchase register. So you can say basis or the information required. Yes or no? Yeah. Then the next thing will be to check the timeline. Yeah. So we can just put down the number of hours, number of days, or maybe you can just put down the timeline. Okay. That what is the time by which we plan to finish this work. Yeah. So all of these stuffs will write. So let's suppose for valuation, Virender says no, it will take 1 week. Valuation is a very critical activity, very complex. So it will require 1 week. All right. So we can write 1 week. Then I think Aisha says no for physical verification. This was very, very complex last time around. So within 2 days, it can't be completed. So we'll need 3 days. All right. Then for purchases testing, I think Ram Nivas was involved. So Ram Nivas says no, this time around we'll need more time. Purchases. So the samples they provide, okay, the vouchers which we receive, the invoices that we obtain, they take a lot of time. So one person will continuously be involved on this. Okay, so it's going to be a continuous process, but in terms of timeline, he's saying that at least 2 days will be required. At least 2 days will be required. Yeah, so accordingly, maybe the number of hours, number of days, or maybe the date we can put up. Yeah, so this is going to be the next thing. And then the next point will be around the team member, means the person responsible. Person who will be responsible. Person responsible doesn't mean the audit partner. Person responsible in respect of performance of this procedure. Means it will be done by whom and who will be. So I can just write down, say, responsible person for verification. Okay, and then we can write down the responsible person for okay, so let me just slightly change this. Okay, so then comes the timeline, and then of course the next point will be the person who will be responsible for verification, and then comes the person who will be reviewing the work. So we can say the reviewer, and of course for reviewer, the again the timeline will have to be put in. So this is how first area has been specified. So let me just put down some of the points around the revenue also. So now, as around revenue, so should we consider this to be an important or not so important area? Yes, over to you quickly. What do you think? So now let's suppose if we are noting down the procedures, Meet says yes, Uday says yes. So there again, what will you write? That yes, this is something which is significant. And then of course you will write down the procedures. Similarly, you will write down the procedures. Then you will write down the timeline. You will write down the date. Then the person who will be responsible. And then of course the reviewer who will be responsible. And then let's suppose the next item is about other expenses. Now, as around other expenses, you find that this is not going to be an important area. So we'll say not significant. Now, not significant doesn't mean that you will ignore this. Not significant doesn't mean you will ignore this. Of course, if it is not significant, then your procedures will change accordingly. Maybe you want to perform limited procedures here. You don't want to perform the detailed testing. Maybe you want to cut down the numbers of samples you will check. Okay, so that's a separate thought process altogether. We are just currently trying to assess as to how all of these things will be put down. Now, when you put down all of these areas, all of the procedures in respect of the audit, then what does this become? Can you tell me what would you call this document as? Yes, tell me. Does this really look like a program? Yes or no? So if let's suppose a program is laid out, so should we not call this maybe a kind of an activity planner or a program which will help support the audit team member in respect of various areas they are required to look at, activities they are required to look at, timelines they will be taking care of? Yes or no? Quickly tell me, everyone. Muskan says yes. What about others? Aisha says yes. Yeah. Joya says yes. It's important. Okay. Sheikh says yes. Yeah. So now this is what we call as an audit program. So can you now understand how will an audit program look like? Now please remember, even though I've just tried to create this program over here in the form of this Excel working file, and even though I've chosen certain fields, so you can say these are nothing but the fields. Okay, these are nothing but the fields. There is no defined format available for an audit program. Because please remember that audit program is all about what? Audit program is all about audit of financial statements of a company, for which the audit team will decide as to what all activities they want to put in, what all fields they want to bring in. Okay. For example, some of the team members may decide that alongside some of these information which are there, okay, maybe the work that they will do, so they will put down that work anywhere. Yeah, so they will also note down that work somewhere. So that document which they will prepare, that is what is called as work paper. So maybe they may want to bring in a reference of that work paper over here. Yeah. So similarly, various other fields may be incorporated over here. And some of these fields, some may think is not really required. Yeah. But this is what you call an audit program as. This audit program is all about laying out various activities, various procedures which are required to be performed during the course of an audit. Yes or no? Everyone clear on this? And any questions, any doubts? So this was all about an audit program. Means, what do you understand about an audit program? Any questions if you have? Yes, over to you. Clear? Angel says clear. Anyone else? Any questions? Okay, great. So there comes this question, and the question for which I have been waiting. So Meet is asking, sir, what is the difference between planning and the program? Great. Now, tell me one thing, that before this program was created, what did we discuss? That all of us are sitting together, all of us are discussing various points. We discussed about a lot of things in relation to the past year audit, in relation to the company. Discussions were also held with the management, and it was also decided some of the things were critical, some of the things were not critical, on the basis of which we also chalked out a strategy. Then we decided that all of these things, all of these strategic areas that we are going to do, this is how we are going to perform the work. Yeah. So this entire process which has been completed so far, on the basis of which this file has been prepared, what do you call that as? This entire process, what do you call that as? That is what you call as audit planning. That is what you call as audit planning, and which doesn't come to an end with the preparation of this document, which will continue, which will continue. But during the course of audit planning, one document is what you are required to prepare. Okay, and why do you prepare? Because that is convenient for you. You want some convenience, okay, which you can just refer later on. Yes or no? Which you can refer later on. So that is what you call as audit program. So you can just say it's a stage which comes somewhere in between the audit plan. Yeah. So I think everybody is just trying to explain this very good. So Rachana is saying planning is what is to be done, and program is what is done right. No. So program is not about something which you have already completed. No, program is also about what is required to be done. But you can say it's a small stage which comes in within this audit planning. Yeah. Sai is saying audit planning is general and audit program is specific. Yes, of course, audit program is specific, but audit program is something which you design on the basis of the planning which has been going on. Understood? Yeah. Manvi is asking, what is the purpose of preparing the audit program? So can anyone answer this question of Manvi, that what is the purpose of preparing the audit program? So why do you think this audit program should be prepared at all? Okay, so if you come back to this document, do you think this document will serve any purpose? Is this really relevant? Will this help the auditor? Sheikh is saying yes, to follow the audit plan smoothly. To follow the audit plan. Hardik is saying to lay down the detailed process. Yeah. Simran says to review what has been done. VR says to specify who is responsible for which work. Yeah. Then Joya says, sir, finding the procedure, time, date, isn't it strategy? Yes, of course. And this strategy is also what will form part of your audit program. Please remember that when it comes to the audit planning, audit program, audit strategy, they are effectively one and the same thing. Yeah, because audit strategy, audit program, they are all part of audit planning process only. Yeah, clear? Great. Huh? Okay, so then I think this next question comes from Harnoor. Harnoor is asking, sir, the audit program is rigid or should this be flexible? So I think everyone can answer this. Huh? Yes, over to you. What do you think? This should be flexible or rigid? I think we have already talked about it. That audit program is what? This is nothing but the planning. So can the auditor keep his planning rigid? The answer is no. It cannot be rigid. Of course, it has to be documented. It has to be performed by the auditor. But at the same time, if at all some changes are required in this, those changes will have to be made. Those changes will have to be made, because if those changes are not made, then what will happen? the audit outcome may not be the one which the auditor desired initially. Okay. So it has to be flexible always. So this is what Amars, Ramnivas and Joya also say. Great. All right. So now moving further on to the audit program only. Now tell me one thing, that let's suppose for this audit program, so we are discussing about this audit program only right now. Let's suppose there are two companies. So currently it's ABC Limited that we talked about. Let's suppose there's another company, say it's XYZ Limited. Okay. Say it's XYZ Limited. ABC Limited, let's suppose, were in the business of manufacturing. And let's suppose XYZ is in the business of software. Yeah, so we've got two sets of companies into two different lines of business. Now tell me one thing. So I have a question for you. Can we say that for both these types of companies, please remember that I'm just talking about these two companies now, that for these two types of companies, can we have a similar type of audit program? Tell me, what are your thoughts? Will it be appropriate if we keep a similar type of audit program? Rishita says no. Dilip says no. I think everyone says no. So can you tell me why? Can you tell me why? Vaishnavi says because businesses vary in the nature, size, composition. So that's why one audit program cannot be suitable for each and every company. Yes or no? And this is what we have been discussing about audit plan always. In so far, all of our sessions, in all of our discussions, what is it that we have discussed? That planning for each and every company, for each and every engagement has to be different. It cannot be similar to everyone. Yeah. So same goes with the audit program as well. Of course, if you want to keep this format, you can keep this format similar. But at the same time, if you talk about this format, that can be used as a reference point, or you can say a starting point. Because this format may also require some changes. Yeah. And it again may vary. But as far as list of activities, list of programs, list of procedures which are required to be performed, it cannot be same for each and every company, each or every audit. So this will vary. Yeah. Next, because the audit planning is a continuous process, that is what we have discussed. It's a continuous process. So that's why this audit program, okay, so I'm talking about this audit program. Should we say that this audit program should also be reviewed by the auditor at different stages, so that if it require any changes at any point of time, those changes are made therein? Yes, quickly tell me. Tell me. Should that be done by the auditor? The answer is yes. And that is what you call as flexibility, which we just discussed. That when it comes to the flexibility of the audit program, what do you mean by flexibility? Flexibility is all about keeping all of these things open. Yeah, because if let's suppose at a later stage, say in respect of inventory, the company believes that cutoff testing was initially not planned. Say this was initially not planned, but now this is also required to be performed. Yeah. And the company needs to stress upon this. Yeah. By company, I mean to say the audit firm. So in such a case, this flexibility has to be there. So we can't say that audit program once prepared will remain as it is. Okay. So that's why some of the areas may get added, some of the areas may get removed. Yeah. So this entire flexibility is what is extremely important as far as the audit program is concerned. All right. Clear? Any questions so far? Any questions if you have? No? All right. So let's move further on the audit program and let's try to understand some more points around this audit program. Okay. Okay. So now when it comes to the audit program, there are few points we need to consider. We need to keep in mind while constructing the audit program. Though I believe that all of these points will be like quite clear to you, and because we have already chalked out an audit program, but still let's try to understand some of these points. Now, as far as the audit program is concerned, when it comes to the construct or when it comes to constructing an audit program, yeah, so some of the things which are important are the scope and the limitation of the assignment. Yeah. So the scope is required to be looked at, limitation of the assignment. So what do you mean by this? Scope. See, if the scope is audit, that's how entire planning will be going on. That's how entire program will be laid out. Yes or no? Because auditor will understand what is this that the auditor is required to check. And in respect of limitation, auditor will know what are the limitations. So let's suppose auditor understands that inventory valuation is a critical process. Okay. Continuing with our example, inventory valuation is a critical process. And auditor always wanted that maybe its valuation should be carried out through a system. But unfortunately, client follows this computation manually. Okay. So this is what? Now this is the limitation of the auditor. Why? Because this preparation of the detail comes from whom? Company. So he understands that this manual working will have to be checked. This manual working will have to be checked. Accordingly, auditor will have to design his audit procedures. Yeah. So this has to be prepared in writing. Now, in writing, it doesn't mean that it has to be in a hard copy only. So in writing means it has to be documented somewhere. It should determine the evidence reasonably available and identify the best evidence. Of course, why? Because when it comes to the program is all about getting into the procedures, looking into the procedures, looking into the documentation, checking the workings, checking the supporting documents, maybe reviewing the contracts, okay, maybe checking the arithmetical accuracy. Yeah. So the evidence which will be produced to the auditor. Now, what do you mean by evidence? The supporting documents, the verification, the files, etc. So all of these things will be looked at by the auditor, and all of these things will form part of the audit program. As far as the audit program is concerned, auditor will apply only those steps which are useful in accomplishing the verification process. Of course, yes. And that's why in our audit program, we included one field. What was that? Significant and not so significant. So what does it mean? That auditor will get to know that if these are the critical activities, my extent of testing will increase. And if these are not critical, these are not significant, my extent of testing may go down. Now, for each and every activity, auditor will include the audit objectives. So what does it mean? For inventory, what is the objective? For inventory, what is the objective? To ensure that the valuation is correct. Yes or no? What could be the objective? To ensure valuation is correct. By conducting physical verification, what will be the objective? To ensure that inventory physically exists with the company. Yeah. So why would any procedure be carried out? Of course, there will be an objective behind that. There will be an objective behind that. So that's why all of those objectives will be achieved by performing that particular audit procedure. And by performing all of those particular procedures, errors, if any, those are required to be looked at. Yeah. So that is also the objective of the audit program. Next, coordinate the procedures to be applied to the related items. Now, let me just go back to the audit program and let me just see as to how we can just relate some of the procedures to the others. Now, when it comes to the inventory of the company, how will the inventory of the company be built up? Can you tell me? Can someone share your thoughts? So how will the inventory of the company be built up? So what will comprise of the inventory? So how do you get the inventory in a company? Through purchases? Through purchases? Yes or no? Yeah. So through purchases. So that's why this procurement process, which the auditor will audit, the purchase testing, which the auditor will do. So by purchase testing, what is it that the auditor will get? Valuation of the raw material. Valuation of the raw material. And this raw material will also be used for the valuation of the finished goods, valuation of work in progress. So can you now understand the linkage between these two? Yeah. So similarly, there could be a lot of activities which are interrelated. And for all of those activities, because certain audit procedures will be applied. So that's how that is also going to help the auditor in establishing the linkage through which the auditor will be able to achieve the audit objectives. Clear? Clear on this, everyone? Any questions, any doubts if you have? Quickly. Any questions, any doubts if you have? All right, so I can see this query coming from Hardik. Yes, Hardik, please go ahead. What is your question?
Sir, good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Sir, like we have seen that the signing auditor is responsible for all the audit. In documentation, audit team is responsible. So, sir, in audit program, is the audit team responsible or only the auditor is responsible?
See, when it comes to the audit procedures, or you can say as around this complete audit process, please understand that there is an audit team which is working on this. Okay, so that's why when it comes to the documentation, performance of procedures, all of these things will be responsibility of what? Audit team. And what do you mean by responsibility? Responsibility means completion of the task, completion of the work, or you can say completion of the audit. So this is the responsibility of individual team member. For example, let's suppose for inventory, we have Raman. Okay. Let's suppose for revenue, we have, say, Joel. And let's suppose for other expenses, we have Anirudh. Fine. So now these are the persons who are responsible for completing the work, for completing various activities, for documenting them. Yeah. But once the audit is completed, once this entire work is completed, there is also someone who is reviewing their work. Yeah, there's also
Yes,
someone
sir.
who's reviewing their work. So let's suppose
Yes.
this review is performed by me. So let's suppose I perform the review of these three persons. So let's suppose I am the audit manager. Yeah. So let's suppose entire audit work is reviewed by me because I am the audit manager. Now, after the audit manager has reviewed entire thing, so the audit partner who's going to sign that, will he also not want to review some of these things, whichever he wants, whichever he considers to be critical? Yes or no? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So the first level review is by the audit manager. So let me just say, first level review is what? Audit manager. And the second level review will always be by the audit partner. So therefore, as around this entire audit, a lot of things are completed by the audit team members. But eventually, each and everything, or maybe whichever way this entire audit strategy has been structured, because audit partner will also structure a strategy so that he can get a comfort as around this complete audit. So will he try to obtain that comfort or not? I'm talking about the audit partner.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Now, because he has done that, so that's why he will be the one who will be responsible for that. Or you can say that he is required to do that. Why? Because eventually, when it comes to the outside world, I'm not talking about the internal audit team or this internal engagement team. I'm just talking about, say, the client, say, the stakeholders, say, the regulators. For all of them, who is the one who is responsible for this audit? That's the audit partner. So can you now understand the difference?
Yes, sir.
All right, great. Okay, so now any more questions if you have around the audit program? Quickly. Any more questions around the audit program? Anyone? Now, let's try to also understand that as around the audit program, there are few things which this program is going to support the audit team on. See, through this audit program, one thing that we are just trying to understand is that this program will help the audit team. Why? Because this will be more of a guide. This will be a document. This will be the responsibility document. This will also be a layout of whatever they have discussed. They will also be documenting this. But if you look at the audit evidence, which is something which is required to be obtained by the auditor, so that audit evidence is provided to the auditor through this audit program. Why? Because in this audit program, auditor has documented a lot of procedures which he is required to work on. Number one, lot of information that he is required to obtain. Yeah. So all the evidence that is required to be collected, that is required to be verified, is all documented in this audit program or not? Yeah. And because that is documented, so that's why auditor will also be performing all of these procedures, which may eventually get documented in the form of various work papers. Okay. And whose reference he may want to include in this audit program also. Yeah. So that's why eventually what will happen? We can say that this audit program or this document, audit program is what? It's a document. Yeah. So this is going to provide lot of evidence. Now, what could be that evidence which would be provided to the auditor? Documentary examination, physical examination. Okay. So when the auditor will perform inquiries, so explanations from the management, from the company, explanations from third parties, arithmetical calculations. Why? Because workings will be performed, workings will be checked. Yeah. Internal controls will be tested, interrelationship of various data. Yeah. So a lot of things. So these are only illustrations which the auditor is going to obtain. Yes, sorry. So I understand someone had a question. All right. So now, as around this audit program, we discussed that a lot of such information will be obtained by the auditor. And all of that information will serve as the audit evidence. And can you also tell me why is this audit evidence important? Why is this audit evidence required to be obtained by the auditor? Can anyone tell me quickly, please? What is the objective? Where is that required? How does this really help the auditor? Audit evidence. Very good. So Pranav is saying because to draw the conclusions, to come to the opinion, Anirudh says to get on to the reasonable assurance, evidence is required. Yeah, very good. So now let's try to also look at some examples. Though we have already looked at some examples in our audit program that we have prepared, but let's look at some more examples. For cash in hand, so we are talking about hard cash, which will be there with the company. So auditor will perform its physical verification. Auditor will go and count this. Yeah. So this evidence of count of the cash is the evidence for cash in hand. Similarly, if you look at some investments which are pledged with the bank, so what will happen? Auditor will obtain the confirmation from the bank or maybe the certificate from the bank. Yeah. So for verification of various things like book debts, ledgers, invoices, debit notes. Yeah. All of these things on a sample basis. So you may be thinking, but sir, not 100%. Yes, on a sample basis, which will be obtained by the auditor. What will happen? These will all become the evidence. They will all serve as the evidence, which is going to help the auditor in doing what? That is all going to help the auditor as far as the opinion is concerned, or you can say as far as drawing conclusions is concerned. Okay, yeah. So let's quickly look at some advantages and disadvantages of the audit program, and then we'll come to some examples also. Now, audit program is a very, very useful document. Yeah, why? Because it assists the audit team. It's an assistance document. Yeah, wherein the procedures are clearly laid out. It gives a complete perspective of the work to be performed. Why? Because it's documented somewhere. You can also say it's a kind of checklist in a way. The team members are selected for various jobs which are required to be performed. Yeah, without a written and a predetermined program, what will happen? Every person who will be working on a lot of areas and the reviewers, they will have to keep everything in their mind. Yes or no? So that's why what can happen? Some of the things, maybe some team members may forget. Yeah, which is not an easy thing, which is not appropriate. Yeah. So tomorrow, to fix the responsibility, if you put that on a piece of paper which is available to the team members, so they understand, so the responsibilities can be fixed, so the accountability can be fixed. Yeah. So the principal can control. Who is the principal? Audit partner, audit manager. So they can control the progress. So they will know what work has been completed, what work is pending, what all critical areas are going on. Yeah, it serves as a guide, not only for the current year audit, but next year when the new team comes in, or maybe the same team continues, this can always be a reference point for them to get into their planning for the next year. Yeah, and of course, as we discussed, it's a very, very important document. Why? Because it provides the evidence in respect of a lot of procedures, a lot of information which is obtained by the auditor. But at the same time, there are some disadvantages. What are the disadvantages which it may have? it may become more of mechanical. Why? Because if let's suppose if this is not kept flexible, okay, so if the audit team members do not have a thinking mind, if let's suppose there are team members who believe, okay, it's a checklist, so we'll do whatever is available in this document. Beyond that, if anything is required to be looked at, if anything is important, they ignore that. They ignore that. So then it works as a disadvantage. It's a drawback. So that's why, even though this document is there wherein the procedures are laid out, the thinking mind has to be there. Okay. So the team has to keep themselves flexible. They cannot keep themselves rigid. Okay. Inefficient assistants, like we just discussed. So let's suppose there's a team of 10 persons. 3 persons are inefficient. Okay. They do not like to work. So later on, what can happen? Maybe there were some areas which were important. Yeah. On the basis of discussions during the course of execution, that should have been found out by those persons. But those persons said no. So whatever was written in that checklist, we followed that. Beyond that, we didn't do anything. Even if that was important, even if a person of rational mind would have picked up, so they ignored it. They ignored it. And a hard and fast audit program may kill the initiative of efficient and enterprising assistant. So what does it mean? That if let's suppose you follow that strictly, if you follow that strictly and you do not keep your mind open, or let's suppose if the team members are there, they want to just follow some of the other things also. They want to just look beyond that. But let's suppose if the senior says no, you will not do anything. So whatever has been told to you in that checklist, in that audit program, you will do only that. You will not go beyond that. So what will happen? Yeah. So all of those efficient persons who could have looked at various other things, yeah, which would have been important for the outcome of the auditor, that may get ignored. So it may eventually become a drawback, but that is only possible when the team members are keeping a rigid approach. Okay, they are just trying to consider that as if it's a sort of Bible which is required to be looked at, and beyond that, nothing is required to be looked at. So that is how things should not be done by the audit team members. Okay, so let's quickly look at this example through which we should get some more clarity around this. Rohit, undergoing practical training, is a part of an engagement team conducting audit of a company engaged in manufacturing of paints. Okay, he's been provided with an audit program pertaining to sales. It lists out various items to be checked, verified by him, including invoices, rate lists, posting into debtors accounts, correction of invoices with correlation of the invoices with e-way bills on a sample basis, etc. During verification, he notices that many e-way bills have been cancelled by the company within 24 hours of their generation in the month of March. There is no specific instruction in the audit program in this regard. Okay, he keeps mum, means he remains silent. He ignores this point. Now, remember the drawback that we just discussed. Okay, so now what has happened? Rohit has ignored this point altogether. Now, the couple of things over here. Let me just try to give you some insights around it. See, many a times what may happen is that all of these e-way bills which the company may have prepared and which they have cancelled. So there could be one of the scenario. So let's try to understand that scenario. Say on 31st March 2024, company generated the e-way bill. Company generated the e-way bill and also the invoice. Also the invoice. And recorded sales. Let's suppose the total sales of the company during the year was 100 crore and sales worth of rupees 3 crore was recognized on 31st of March. Okay. But the company could not dispatch those goods, or the company knew that they will not be able to dispatch those goods. So that's why what did they do? Very next day, say on 1st of April 2024, company cancelled those e-way bills and thereby reversed the sales. But on next day means in the next financial year. Now, ideally, in this case, the company should not have recognized their sales as on 31st March 2024. Yes or no? Yes or no? Tell me. Yes or no? If you go by the accounting principles, yeah. So tell me one thing. Now it's a question for everyone. Huh? Tell me one thing, that if you look at this guy Rohit, say he's an intern. So he has just started his articleship. He is an intern. New boy. Intern, doesn't know much about audit. Okay, maybe some of you can relate to Rohit. He doesn't know much of audit. He just started off. He was just strictly following the audit program. So as around the audit program, there's nothing he missed out. Everything he has followed strictly. Yeah, in a very diligent manner. He has done everything as exactly it was there in the audit program. And this point was nowhere covered in the audit program. This point was nowhere covered in the audit program. Even though he noticed, but he also referred to the audit program. And he found that it's not there in the audit program. So that's why he ignored. Now, in such a case, what do you think about this attitude, or maybe the approach which has been considered by Rohit? Over to you. Yeah, so please keep this entire thought process and accordingly answer. Huh? Sudeep is saying, sir, he must let know the audit manager about the cancellation. Okay. Hardik is saying he should report to the engagement partner. Rishita is saying he must report to the seniors. So I think everyone is very clear. Yeah, and this is something which is apparent from your responses. I have missed out a lot of responses from your side though, that as far as Rohit is concerned, there's no doubt that he was very diligent in following the audit program. There's no doubt about it. Okay. But if there was something which he noticed, even though he's an intern, he doesn't know much about audit, and which he also tried to refer in the audit program, he couldn't find. At least he could have gone and spoken to his seniors. So one can say that he didn't have the knowledge, he didn't have the skill set to perform the audit procedures around this, which is fine. But as the audit team member, what was his responsibility? To at least reach out to the seniors that there is this new thing which has come up. Okay, so what should I do? Should I ignore that or should I do that? Yeah, so if he would have followed that, that is what you consider as a thinking mind or an open mind. Otherwise, what do you call it as? Rigid approach. Or you can say somewhere you are saying that it's inflexible. So it's not that he didn't want to do, it's just that he didn't apply the mind. Okay, he didn't consider that approach, which was extremely important as far as the audit procedures were concerned. So that's why in this case, the approach which was followed by the intern cannot be considered to be proper. Okay, clear on this? Everyone clear? Yeah. So any questions, any doubts? So what we can do is maybe we can just end our discussion for today now. Please remember, we are not yet done. So there is some more part of this chapter which we are going to cover in the next session. Yeah, but I believe you'll have some questions, doubts. So maybe we can just move on to your questions, doubts now. Yeah, but some of you, if you want to just move out, then you can feel free. And some of you who can just stay around, who just want to listen to the other question, just feel free to stay here. Okay, so now over to your questions, your doubts. Okay, Sundar is asking, can an auditor sign the audit report prepared by the audit team or the audit partner? Or he can only sign the report he creates? See, creation of the audit report is not important. And please remember that auditor and audit partner are not different. Auditor, by auditor, you mean to say the audit partner only. Enough. Okay. Virender is asking, can you please explain? I understand, Virender, you are talking about this last example, the Rohit one. Yes. Please confirm quickly. Okay, great. Thanks everyone for your time and for your wonderful participation that you have shown. But I'm just around. So we'll discuss your questions, your doubts. So Dilip is asking, would the documentation of audit plan and the program be identical or different? See, please remember, audit program is a detailed process. And in this process, there's one stage which you call as audit program. So of course, audit program you will document in a way you are also documenting your audit planning. Okay, so that's one and the same thing. Then Amrita is asking about uploading the notes. So these are already uploaded. So you can just go check. So whatever we have discussed today in the previous sessions, I understand all of these are uploaded. So you go check, please. I think Deepdas or maybe many of you will have similar questions. Okay, so then I think Harnoor is asking about the Zoom link. Maybe the concerned admin team is what you can just reach out to. Then Bandria Sai is asking, okay, so I think there again, please reach out to the concerned admin team. Okay, so Virender is asking about question number 7. All right, so now if you come back to question number 7, Virender, see in this question, we discussed that there was an audit team member who was provided with an audit program. Okay, and he followed that audit program very strictly, but in a very rigid manner. And there was a new thing in relation to the area he was checking, and which was a very important thing, which he ignored. So the question was that should he ignore that important area, that new information which comes to his notice? So idea is not to go and trace that. Idea is that if he has noticed that, should he ignore that? Could he ignore that? The answer was no. That because he was there, he could understand, he could notice something which was important, even though that was missing in the audit program. He should have discussed. That is what we call as planning, and that is what we call as a continuous planning exercise. Okay. Yeah. Mahalakshmi is asking, sir, in question 7, if Rohit is a CA, he should disclose this in the audit. See, it doesn't matter whether he is a CA or an intern. The important point is that if some new matter comes up during the course of audit, you need to keep your mind open. Okay. You need to have a thinking mind. Yeah, you need to keep a flexible approach. You should just simply not say that whatever we have finalized earlier, as far as the audit procedures are concerned, will only do that, will not go beyond that. That is what you call as a rigid approach. That is something which is very, very risky if somebody wants to follow that. Okay. To disclose that or not to disclose that, that will depend on the conclusions that you draw. So let's suppose if you conclude that there are errors, that is what you will want to report. Otherwise, not. Okay. Virender is asking, sir, in this case, who is responsible? You tell me. In this case, of course, Rohit is responsible for ignoring this point. Yeah. All right. Okay. So any more questions if you have? Any more questions? Any more questions? Any more doubts if you have? All right. So I think this question
Sir,
comes from Palvi. So Palvi is asking, sir, if the audit program is rigid, which the intern know, and therefore he didn't bring the concern to the notice of the principal, even then his attitude is improper. Of course, yes. That's what we discussed, huh? Yeah.
sir, this is Sai Charan, sir.
Yes, Sai, please go ahead.
So elaborating on this Rohit example, as an
Yes.
a new article, my scope
Yes.
was defined by an audit manager to perform a particular program, the audit of
Yes.
and sales. Uh,
Right.
uh, if I didn't disclose the fact in my outcomes, and the audit
Outcome
was
means
done,
the work paper, the
yes,
things that you
yes,
work on, the work papers that you
yes.
create. Yes.
If it doesn't uh, it was not disclosed and audit was done, if something error or fraud was happened on that same aspect, will that be how it is going to impact an critical assistant, and how is that auditor partner is responsible for that?
See, if let's suppose tomorrow some material misstatement results, okay, in this particular area, which let's suppose has been ignored by Rohit, then eventually whose responsibility was that? It was the responsibility of the audit partner who has signed the audit report. And the audit partner should have taken care as around some of these possibilities. So tomorrow, who is going to be the person who will be responsible for this? Audit partner. Yeah. Okay.
Sir, but as we come across many people as an every article assistant cannot be an efficient of performing, right,
Yes.
sir? So how could
Yes.
auditor should ensure on that?
So that's how, this systems processes should be built up. That's how this entire teams should be structured. And that is what you call as review mechanism. Okay. So the review mechanism should be stronger. So the senior team members, the audit partner, they should understand that at the field level, means at the ground level, what are the persons who will be working, what is their competence level, what are the areas they can ignore, they can miss out on. That's how they should put the seniors who will review their work, so that some of these things do not get missed out. Plus they should also top up with their experience, their reviews. Yeah, so this is all, you can say, a system which is required to be built up, not only in the organization but also in the engagement. And that's how this entire thing works.
Thank you.
All right. So I understand, Dipali, you have a query. Yes, Dipali.
For what reason, in the course of audit, the auditor changes planning decision?
Sorry.
Sir, for
Sorry.
what reason, in the course of audit, the auditor changes planning decisions?
See, during the course of planning, let me just give you one example. So let's suppose, say you have planned for a trip. Okay, Dipali, let's suppose you and three of your friends have planned for a trip. Okay, and let's suppose you plan to go to Singapore. Yeah, and you are thinking that everything will be fine in terms of weather and all of these stuff. Yeah, so a lot of outings you have planned for 1 week. Yeah, so that's how you have planned your entire trip. But when you land up, so what do you find? Oh, the weather is not so pleasant. It's raining very heavily, and for the first 2 to 3 days, eventually you didn't think about it. When you got over there, you found out that all of these outings that you planned, you will not be able to do. So now tell me one thing, that when you land up over there, so what will you do in such a case? Will you still continue with your plan, or will you just change your plan as far as the trip is concerned?
Change plan.
You will change. Huh? So that means depending on the situations, depending on the events which may arise during the course of your trip, you'll change. Huh? So your planning, which was done in an efficient manner before you went for the trip, was perfect. But things may not work out exactly in the same manner as we plan earlier. So the same goes with the audit also. Audit is also a set of activities. Audit is also a process. So whatever you may have planned earlier, things may change during the course of your work. You may find some of the new things may come up, some new information may come up, some new events may come up, because of which you are required to re-strategize. You may want to do different procedures. You may want to cut down on some procedures. And that's what is called as a continuous planning, or you can say a reassessment of planning. Okay?
Thank you, sir.
Sure. All right. So I think with this, we are done, and I don't see any further questions. So we can just end our discussion now. Yeah. All right. So thanks once again, everyone, for your time, for your wonderful participation. Thanks so much. One more request
Thank you, sir.
again, please come with the revision of whatever we have discussed today. Yeah, that will help both of us. Okay. All right. Thanks so much. So I think, Ashok, we can just close this. Thank you. Good night.